what are you drinking there?
Today, well, you know what? I was drinking it earlier, and now it's kind of like gotten a little... Let me tell you first. First, I'm drinking an Earl Grey milk tea with the like cheese foam thing and soy milk. 50 ice, 50 sugar. This is from T4.
Yeah.
In York. This is my one problem with having milk teas is that when I leave them to sit for too long, I have to drink them instantly, because if I leave them to sit for too long, then I kind of get put off by it, because something about letting milk get to room temperature is
off-putting.
It's just disgusting.
Yeah. I have a Crown Earl Grey tea from T4 as well. I had them put extra cream as well, because I wanted the ratio to be quite equal. And
that was per my suggestion.
Yeah, your suggestion.
Credit where credit is due.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, you suggested, and I was like, okay, cool. Lay erasure.
Yeah,
lay
erasure.
You're hosting a podcast. Erasure where?
You literally just erased me from your bubble tea story.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
And I got it with 50% ice and 50% sugar, because I always stick to that.
Yeah.
Because I think it's the golden ratio when it comes to like milk teas, and I didn't even get a milk tea. I just got a tea with the foam. Some
people always like tell me that they don't get any ice when they get bubble tea, and I just think that's kind of crazy. Like the only time is if it's okay, I went into Mubu once, and this is a whole separate thing, but they told me once to get one of the drinks I ordered without ice per like their store's recommendation.
Yeah.
That was the only time that I was like, okay, I'm gonna trust you. But when like sometimes Aiden goes and he'll get just like a regular milk tea with tapioca in it, no ice. Why are you raw dogging?
Not even a little bit?
No, not even 30%. Like, it's like 0 ice. And I'm just like, that's like lukewarm tea, and that makes me feel unwell. You know what I mean? It's either hot or it's iced, but you can't be lukewarm.
Yeah, I agree. It can't be in the mix. That just would make me feel like I'm drinking tea that has been left out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, just put ice in your iced tea.
I'm Tina.
I'm Lay.
And welcome to Observations from the Tea Room.
Ooh.
Today we're going to be talking about a topic that I personally find very compelling, and it's something that I think about, well, we've been thinking about it a lot.
I mean, you brought it up to me, but yeah, I think we both like...
Whether or not you named it, like put a name to like what you were thinking of, you were still thinking of it. And I think every woman, femme, AFAB person, I guess... Well, no, I'm actually going to... So...
Today's topic is...
Can men and women ever have a truly free relationship? Like, are heterosexual relationships inherently oppressive as well?
See, I was taking this more as like, can men and women ever truly be equal in a relationship? But I like this.
I think it's just an extension of that.
Yeah, I think that there's room for both of them in the conversation.
Yeah, because... The reason why I wanted to bring this conversation up is because during my final year of university, well, the focus was care. We were free to choose one particular issue in the world and kind of focus on it. And obviously we had to write an essay, and we kind of had to do like a project surrounding that issue. And I really wanted to look at how capitalism, misogyny, and mental illness kind of all come together.
Okay, yeah.
And I think the way women interact with men and how heterosexual relationships are play a big role in that. So to try and answer the question to begin with, whether or not a man and a woman can ever have a truly free relationship isn't just dependent on the individual man and woman in a relationship. How can it be? It's not dependent on that, especially when we've been brought up under these like structures of domination, like capitalism, from a young age. Young girls are socialized, and young boys are also social. We're all taught about what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a man.
But, I think what's interesting is that we are socialized in a particular way, but what sticks out to me is that we're also socialized to be a certain way in relation to each other.
Absolutely.
Like, it's not just that we're socialized kind of in a vacuum, like women are a certain way, just full stop. It is because women need to be a certain way in order to, like, reflect or oppose or complement men.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, it's really that we're socialized, I think, to be in these pairings more than anything. And I don't have any quotes pulled up right now, but there was a video I watched on YouTube, a video essay about metanormativity, I think is the full word. And I think it's by Tara Mooney. If anyone knows what the video I'm talking about is, let me know. But basically, there's this in society, I think we often have this notion that everybody needs to eventually be into a romantic relationship, and we put a lot of emphasis on being in romantic relationships or romantic pairings, especially, you know, heterosexual romantic pairings and couples. And our entire culture and media seems to always revolve around that as being like the most important thing. And I think we're also socialized because of that
to seek it out and to prioritize it over all else.
Yeah, and like that's what ultimately sort of like influences the way that we're conditioned to behave or conditioned to like see ourselves.
Yeah, because I think like we put the idea of being in a relationship on a pedestal.
Yeah.
And it's really insidious, and it's to the detriment of all of our other connections and our relationships, because ultimately what it does, it promotes some version of the nuclear family, especially because it's always heterosexual relationships that are pushed, because women are taught, oh, if you don't have a man, what's the point?
Yeah, like what do you do everything for, you know what I mean?
Like a man, like the approval and the partnership of a man, we're always taught that that is the highest form of validation. The reason why that is so damaging is because essentially it promotes a nuclear unit, but the nuclear unit is damaging. The nuclear family is what allows capitalism to continue and to fester. And it's also why I think like homosexual relationships are so marginalized, because they give us a glimpse of what actual egalitarian love and partnerships can look like, because there are no gender roles, there are no expectations because you're the man, I'm the woman. Non-nuclear partnerships and just ways of living are so dangerous to capitalism and misogyny. And I think that's why when somebody doesn't follow the life script, they're an outcast, and they're outcasted for that particular reason, because that poses a threat to capitalism.
Okay, right. I mean, I'm following, but like I'm also.
Am I making any sense?
You are. I'm just like.
It's a lot to think about.
It is. They're big topics, you know. Like I'm trying to sort of boil down.
Bell hooks. Yeah.
Queen, icon.
Yeah. In All About Love, she says, capitalism and patriarchy together as structures of domination have worked overtime to undermine and destroy this larger unit of kin, replacing the family community with a more privatized, small, autocratic unit, helped increase the alienation and made abuses of power possible.
Okay, I think I kind of understand this actually.
Yeah.
So I think from that quote specifically, what I'm getting is the sense that like when we sort of not idolize, but I guess when we really worship the being in a nuclear family or being in a couple, like to put it on like an even smaller scale, that takes away from the idea of having community and having like multiple people serve multiple functions in life. You know what I mean? Like I think that's so. I mean, it's so unrealistic to me, because I think that if I put all of my emphasis, all of my feelings, all of my thoughts, everything into the relationship I'm in, it wouldn't work, you know what I mean? Like, no. I just need different people in your life bring out different aspects of your personality or different aspects of, like, what's important to you. But I think especially for women, what I find is that it's really hard as a woman to solely focus on one person at a time, because I think we're just more in touch with bigger feelings, with understanding our place in the world.
Because we're taught that that's our job. We're taught that it's our job to do all of this emotional labor, and that's why women are so attentive.
Yeah. I don't know, it's like, I think in a small range too, women have so many big feelings and big opinions. All the women that I know in my life are like that. We have, like, there's so much kind of breadth in what we can talk about and what we think about, and I feel like what happens is when you don't have a landing pad of like a big family or a big group of friends or like lots of different people in different parts of your life to talk about that with, it becomes that the one person, like your husband or your boyfriend, again, this is in a heterosexual situation, kind of has more control over how much they actually get to engage with you. You know what I mean? Or what parts of you they get to engage with, or what parts of you they want you to express. And this kind of goes into, I think, another bit about talking about identity and authenticity. It's like, to truly be your authentic self, you need to have all these different avenues that open up all these different aspects of, like, who you are. But when you're with one person or like a really small group of people, that becomes dialed down, because I feel like what I'm trying to do is talk about something really theoretical, and I need to give you an example. So if you look at like a standard sort of nuclear family, let's say like a wife, a husband, and 2 kids. What happens to the wife in most of these situations is that she becomes this caretaker. You know, these are all societal stereotypes. She becomes a caretaker. She you know, might not work as much. She has to take care of the house, take care of the kids, take care of the husband. And what happens in that scenario is that because these expectations of what her role is, and like it is kind of reciprocal in that there are expectations that are put on the husband in that situation too. Her kids expect her to be mom.
Yeah.
The husband expects her to be wife. And
there's no room for anything else. They're very rigid roles.
Exactly. They are rigid roles, and you're not allowed to really express things that are outside of that, even though everyone has that, right?
You know what that reminds me of?
Yeah.
This isn't even anywhere in my notes for this episode. I have been reading Healing the Shame That Binds You.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, by John Bradshaw, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically how, as we grow up, we develop toxic shame and how it's so detrimental to us. And one of the things that can lead someone to have all of this internalized toxic shame is looking at their family and the dynamics. And a lot of toxically shamed families will have these really rigid roles and they can't deviate from. Because in a normal, healthy family, your roles will fluctuate, they'll change, you'll swap roles, you'll do this. And I think it's a lot easier to that when you have a larger unit of kin.
But I think, it's because everyone has to do their part to make it work.
Yeah.
And because a larger amount of people is also harder to manage,
But in a larger unit of kin, mum isn't just mum. Mum is also auntie. She's also a sister.
Yeah.
And you see all of these different versions of each other.
Yeah.
And I think it might lead to viewing each other more holistically.
I agree. And I think that's one thing is, like, there's two sides of it. I think from my experience, it's like I come from a South Asian background. And so obviously, like, my family is really large, and like when we're all together it's like a really big deal and everything, but I prefer when we're all together, despite it being really overwhelming with so many people, I prefer that to just being nuclear, because ultimately it just feels more like I'm surrounded by lots of different people with lots of different things going on. I get to be all these different characters in myself. But so what I find interesting about this, and now I get to bring up my notes. So a certain somebody recommended me this book called The Beauty Myth.
I wonder who that was.
Oh my god, I wonder who that was.
Anyways.
Somebody who may or may not be in this room.
It was Doe.
Yeah, it was the dog. Yeah. What this has got me thinking about, off the top of my head, is, again, when we think about these ideas of men and women being free, being equal in their relationships, if that's possible, and then also tying in with this idea of, like, being in a nuclear situation or with lesser people sort of tones down your personality. This quote from page 133 says, "The woman learns that no matter how assertive she may be in the world, her private submission to control is what makes her desirable." Oh, yeah. Oh. So what that immediately made me think of when I was reading this chapter was this, I don't know if anyone's heard of this stereotype. I've heard this, I don't remember, from a TV show or like a book or some kind of like stupid sitcom type situation where someone made a joke about how women who are CEOs, who are like, high up, especially in their career, like have really, big roles in their career, are like really submissive in the bedroom, or just want to be like, tossed around or like yelled at, or like something like that. I hate that stereotype because that's, first of all, just ridiculous and I don't care. Yeah. But also, what it made me think of is this idea that as a woman, I feel like no matter what role you play, like whether it's that you're more of the breadwinner in your relationship, whether you have a high role in your career, you tend to be more assertive, you tend to be more tough, there's always a space where you have to be the submissive person. And I don't think that always applies to men, because I think men are expected to be very dominant people. They're expected to be all these things. So when they're not, it's just like, well, there's a fault with you. So you have to live up to this in some aspect of your life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I think that goes into this idea of sort of toning down aspects of your personality. Let's say that you're a woman who's very, very assertive, or who is just like, a CEO. You just tend to, like, you don't take shit. You know what I mean? That's not, and you know what I mean? Like, it's also, this is all very stereotypical, but it's just sort of like, if you're just the type of person who is very dominant, regardless of your gender or your sex, it shouldn't matter. Like, that shouldn't mean that you have to be a certain way at some point. When we talk about, like, these external parts of your life in relation to your sexual life, too, can be really damaging. Like, I think that stereotype that, well, she might be this bossy person outside, but that means that she wants this in the bedroom.
Yeah, she just wants to, I don't know, have somebody take control for once. Or, something
that
like
doesn't feel necessarily true. I just don't think that you can say that comfortably about anybody. And I think that it's toning down her power. It's toning down her assertiveness, because that's so uncomfortable. Like,
but why are you thinking about, like, you see a woman in a position of power, And the first thing you do is to degrade her to that. I think that's how a lot of insecure men make their peace with seeing women who are potentially in higher positions than they are, because men know that they have a physical advantage. Oh, I could probably
do this to her, or she wants this.
Like, she might be all of this, but I could probably still...
No, but that's what I mean, is I think it's very uncomfortable, too, because it's like, even when we get women who try to disrupt that nuclear family role, like, have women who probably work, and let's say, like, we have stay-at-home husbands or something, there's just always this kind of underlying thing. It's like, okay, well, this only works within the binary of gender, and so if you're really going to truly disrupt something, it's not possible, you know what I mean? Like, it can't be one way. And there's, I feel like it's also just, there's the stereotypes that come along with dominance and submissiveness, and there's so much I have, like, about this in my notes. I can try to pull some more.
Please.
Yeah, so I wrote in my notes that there's this contrasting theory where women are stereotyped into one of two versions, submissive or dominant. Therefore, in any relationship, they are being seen for this dichotomy. So what I meant by that, I think, when I was writing this was, like, when you look at, I mean, this is going to get kind of heavily, like, into more topics about, like, sexual relationships.
Yeah, that's fine.
But it is definitely, like, I think when you look at women in porn, or when you look at women just, like, the way that they're kind of stereotyped for how they act. Like, you have an assertive woman, and then you have, like, a really soft woman. Or you have, like, the virginal, like, pure...
The virginal, battered...
Yeah, exactly. And
carry on with your point, because I have so much I can
No, but it's like exactly that. And then you have sort of this, like, dominatrix, like, type. You know, you have these two different types, but in either scenario, both of those women are being subjected down into this, like, hypersexualization that doesn't exist for men. Like, when you have a man who, like, you know, he's, like, looking at this woman who might be really submissive, and that's what he's into, or that sort of thing. It's just, like, he's hypersexualizing her for being submissive. And it's not about her either, it's more about him. Like, he's just like, well, I'm getting, you know, pleasure out of this experience, or pleasure out of, like, this for you. But when a woman, and again, in that stereotype, within the bounds of that stereotype, it's also that the submissive girl is going to get her pleasure from this guy being dominant with her and being, you know, like, you know, rough with her or whatever. But then when you get to, like, a dominatrix type, or, like, a woman who is put into this sort of dominant role, it still is kind of about the man, how the man feels. Like, it's about, like, him being like, oh, I just want to, like, sit back and relax or whatever. Like, he's never put into this, like, this position where he really gets to be, like, truly, like, submissive in the same way that the submissive girl is.
Not necessarily submissive, but his power is never taken away from him.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's just, like, I don't know. I mean, this is also kind of bordering on another topic for a different topic that, you know, like, I want to do for this podcast, so I won't go too much, but that's kind of where this conversation has led me, so... Okay,
because, like, with the whole thing with pornography, I genuinely do not believe that a man who frequently, or just watches pornography in general... Yeah, anyways.
Yeah, I mean...
If a man watches pornography, I truly cannot believe he sees women as equal.
No.
Like, if you spend X amount of time watching and jerking off to videos of women being brutalized, or, like, things like that, how can you separate that from how you see women in your day-to-day life?
But I think, yeah, it's also just, like, pornography, no matter what way you try to look at it, whether it's, like, ethical or not ethical, there's just, it's always going to have this kind of voyeuristic, masochistic kind of look at, or sadistic look at women. Sorry, I always confuse the two words.
It's okay. Like, yeah, like...
Yeah, like, it's just never...
How can you go out and interact with women when you, deep down, you believe that they should be subordinate to you, that, you know, they should be put in their place, and that you're completely fine with watching videos of them being brutalized and beaten, but it's covered up as kink, of course.
Yeah, exactly. And, like, I think it's so hard to find it. So go ahead.
Like, as women, with the knowledge that a lot, maybe even the majority of men watch pornography, how can we interact with the men in our lives with this kind of fear or uncertainty that, hey, this guy might really enjoy watching people who look like me get beat and
killed and raped and
raped, and, like, used.
Trigger warning.
And used.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think that it's like
how can a woman ever develop or ever have the capacity to trust a man enough to develop a free and equal relationship?
Yeah, and
if he believes she should be subjected to this.
No, exactly. And I think another thing that comes into it is this idea about, like, sexual freedom and stuff like that, or, like, women having sexual freedom. That's, I mean,
or, like, the sexual liberation.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
and
don't even get me started.
It's, like, it's so difficult, because it really makes you question, when you think about it too much, if you can truly be free, because, like, by face value, of course, you're like, oh yeah, this makes people more like equal and free in relationships. But I have this quote that my friend sent me from Andrea Dworkin's Right Wing Woman. And it says that sexual freedom is when women do the things that men think are sexy. The more women do these things, the more sexually free they are.
I couldn't disagree less.
Either, because and it makes you kind of think about it, like, I mean, and maybe this is just coming from me with my view of kind of the world and like sexual relationships and romantic relationships and so on and so forth, but it's just sort of like, I find more and more as I grow older, it's really, really hard as a woman to ever feel completely free or completely like sexually liberated, because it's just so tied down to sexism. Like, it's just always tied down to that. I find it really difficult, even when I'm bisexual, and so even when I am, you know, like thinking about relation like between two women and stuff like that, like sapphic relationships and that sort of thing, it still is under this gaze of this like male gaze, you know, and it's still under this feeling of like, oh, but this is only like sexy, or this is only this thing because it's taboo, and this is like, it's always related back to that stereotypical sort of like man on women sex.
Yeah,
you know what I mean,
like just men being in control of every aspect of what a woman does. Because even when like lesbians or bisexuals, when the conversation is about them, somehow men end up being brought up anyways.
Because it's not about I feel like with sapphic relationships a lot of the time, it's not always about, I mean, for me at least, it never can honestly be focused on the fact that it's just like, this is just a sapphic relationship. It's always about the absence of there not being a man in that situation.
Yes.
You know, it's not about, oh, this relationship is nice on its own. It's about like, well, this relationship is nice despite not having a man involved. You know what I mean? And I think that that's the kind of rhetoric I understand from conversations I have with other friends who are bisexual, who are lesbians, you know, so on and so forth.
Interesting. That's really interesting. And it kind of makes me think about the bisexual girlies who, because there's that stereotype, bi girl, but will never date a woman.
Oh, no,
like,
not these ones.
Yeah, the fake bisexual.
Oh.
But like, ultimately, when we're taught and socialized that to be with a man is the ideal and ultimate partnership, and that, you know, you're lacking if you don't have a man, then you can't fully blame them for wanting to be with one at the end of the day. But obviously for lesbians who have no other alternative,
yeah,
that's why the resentment builds, and like understandably so.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know even how to like add to this, but I want to let you talk about your notes, because yeah.
But I just think the reason why obviously men are always find themselves back into these spaces or conversations about lesbians and, you know, bisexual and sapphic relationships, it's because these alternative ways of living, these partnerships, they do pose a threat to capitalism and misogyny if the nuclear unit is where, you know, these people are dominated. If the nuclear unit helps, and obviously I know capitalism of today is much, much different to the capitalism where, you know, it was normal for there to just be housewives and men who went out to work.
Yeah. Now
it's like shifted into something a lot more insidious.
Mm-hmm.
And
which is
neoliberal capitalism.
Explain for the viewers, listeners, you know, peoples,
so
they, thems, she, hers, he, hims, so on.
The peeps.
The dude bros. The K-pop fans who thought this was a K-pop exclusive podcast.
Yeah.
And it's actually...
It's not. We talk about everything.
Okay, yeah. So what is neoliberal capitalism?
To vaguely summarize it, neoliberalism is basically to... Pause.
No, I'm not pausing. You have the definition pulled up on your laptop, and you can't tell me what it means.
I'm not a very verbose speaker.
Then why would you start a podcast with me?
Neoliberalism is contemporarily used to refer to market-oriented reform policies, such as eliminating price controls, deregulating capital markets, lowering trade barriers.
I still don't understand what it means.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm trying to think about how I can...
To refer to market-oriented reform policies.
Basically, it's capitalism on drugs.
Oh my god.
It's capitalism on crack.
Okay. And this has to do with women and the nuclear family. Why?
Okay, so I have started reading... Well, I've been reading some of his works for a while here and there. The philosopher Byung-Chul Han.
Oh shit.
Yeah, oh shit.
He's my favorite K-pop artist. He's my bias. He's my alt.
Okay.
Are people gonna give us flack because I made that joke because he's
Yeah.
Korean?
Yeah.
Shit, bro.
Yeah.
This is just my sense of humor. So I'm sorry.
And I will be referring to two of his works in particular, Psychopolitics and The Burnout Society. And what he said is how neoliberal capitalism is making us all crazy and mentally ill.
Okay. I mean, I
Yeah.
would agree if I even understood what neoliberal capitalism is.
It's just what we live in today.
I mean, yeah, like, okay, all right.
Anyways.
Yeah.
Anyways. And obviously, reading these works, I was like, wow. Like, I resonate with this a lot. But then,
How does
let me explain what he says in his books, okay? So in Psychopolitics, Neoliberalism and New Technologies of Power, he says that the neoliberal subject, which is all of us, has no capacity for relationships with others that may be free of purpose. So we don't engage in relationships that we deem as not beneficial to ourselves. And because of that, and the landscape that we live in, like all of our relationships somehow have to be beneficial to ourselves because we don't deem relationships or we don't get anything out of as viable or as worthy.
But isn't that kind of true? Like, if you don't get something out of a relationship, what's the point of having it in your life in the first place? Like, you should be getting something out of every relationship that you have, right?
I think when he says that, he means it as a way to progress yourself and your capital and your career, you know, like networking and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah.
Right, but then I thought about it kind of through a feminist lens.
Okay.
And I was
Oh my god, the feminist lens?
The feminist lens.
Oh my god, everyone pull out your feminist lens glasses.
Yeah.
Oh my
And
god.
I think this is why a lot of men, you know, will seek partners because they want to get something out of it.
They want to get the gains! I'm trying to be, like, funny to break up this serious conversation. I'm being the comedic relief
Thank you.
that we need in this podcast.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's not uncommon for women to be so dissatisfied in their relationships because they do so much, and men are not expected to do domestic labor or the emotional labor that women do. Women are getting sick. A lot of the time, like, people, what is it? People on, like, feminist spaces on, like, Reddit will be like, men just want a bang maid. And it's, like, kind of true.
It is, and it's kind of like women who aren't... So I think that men tend to always, like, they seek out something from their relationship as some kind of, like, huge emotional impact on their life, like, something to tell, like, give them purpose almost, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But women are meant to go along with that, you know what I mean? Like, I think women are just meant to go along with this, like, that's their purpose. Their purpose is to give men purpose, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, their purpose is to fulfill, like, the role of a wife or
and
mother.
It's like, you as a woman, I feel like you're meant to fulfill some kind of role that's predetermined for you, or like set to you. Like, if you want to make purpose of yourself as a woman, then it needs to follow into one of these categories, if that makes sense.
If you want to fulfill your purpose as a woman, not just as a person.
Yeah, so there's another quote I have from The Beauty Myth that is on page 134 that says, if women were going to have sexual freedom and a measure of worldly power, they'd better learn to fuck like men. And it's sort of like, this is, I mean, obviously heavily in, like, again, with this conversation about, like, sexual relationships, but I think that also applies outside, in that in order for women to be able to, like, gain some of their own authority or be, like, entitled to have more purpose in their life or, like, make something out of themselves, like, have jobs or, like, have lives outside of being a housewife or being, you know, a mother or something like that, you have to learn how to become more like a man.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah, it is. Like, you have to become more like that, and I feel like it's kind of weird because it's really hard, I think, for women, if we're going with this idea that men inherently will seek out purpose or seek out, like, emotional, maybe structure or validation or anything from being in relationships with women. For women who, again, like, learn to be like men, I think it's the absence of being in those relationships and the absence of, like being their own man almost has the opposite effect for them. Like, that is their emotional validation. You know what I mean? Like, being with themselves is what becomes their purpose, if that makes sense. I feel like men always have, like, their purpose is to be surrounded, like, focus on somebody else, but women's purpose can really be internalized. You know what I mean? It can be an internal thing. I find that with a lot of men is that, you know, their ultimate purpose is to find somebody, or, like, a lot of my male friends who want to be in relationships or who have been very desperate for relationships in their life have always been looking for somebody to, like, sort of confirm their existence as valuable. You know what I mean? Is someone to be, like, someone to love, someone to project their feelings onto, someone to, like, take on their hardships or share in their lives. And that's a perfectly fine thing. Like, it's a nice thing to have. But what I just find is that I see that pattern so much more often with men, whereas women, I don't find a lot of my women friends seek out relationships to fulfill some part of themselves. That's something that kind of continues to go on as a personal journey outside of being in relationships with men. And I find that really disproportionate. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's what makes it quite unequal, is that the codependence that men seek out from women really, really fucks with the independence that women inherently tend to have.
And from that quote, I think to fuck like a man is to fuck without the consequence of getting pregnant. I think I want to bring that up because when women become pregnant and when they have children, it really impacts their career prospects. Whether you like to admit it or not, it does.
Like, I think it impacts every aspect of your life as a woman.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it impacts your beauty, it impacts your
health, your body,
health, how people see
your mental
you,
health,
how people value you. Like,
it can change your relationship with your partner.
Yeah, it can change your relationship with everybody, because then people also just like automatically assume there's like, I forgot what the exact term is, but it's like mom guilt or something. Like, you, like, that becomes your life is mom guilt, and you start to become like less of a, so many people just think of moms as less of a woman and less of a person than you do non-pregnant women or women who aren't mothers, you know, like.
And in Everyday Sexism, which is like an online forum, but then there was the Everyday Sexism Project, and then obviously a book published by Laura Bates.
Basically,
Laura it said that
Bates.
It said that.
Did it say Laura Bates?
Shut up. I'm trying to find a quote.
Oh, was the quote, "But you've been so out of touch."
Like, there's like this, not disdain, but reluctance to hire women who are mothers, women who are pregnant, or women of childbearing age. Women of childbearing age is a crazy broad range. Like, it's basically just women in general.
Comment a turtle in the comment section if you're a woman of childbearing age.
Yeah.
Comment a pink heart emoji in the comment section if you're a woman of childbearing age.
Comment a laughing face emoji if you're a man of childbearing age.
Bruh. Comment a laughing face emoji if you're a man of any age.
There's this belief that, like, when women who want to pursue their careers, right, it will eventually get disrupted when, not if, but when they decide to have a family, when they decide to have kids. And, like, I think that's why women aren't taken seriously in the work. You're gasping as
I think it's just adding like effect. It's adding I don't
know,
dramatic effect.
It makes me feel like you're not taking me very seriously.
I am taking you seriously. I'm like the most serious I've ever been right now in this moment. No, but I know what you mean. Like,
yes, so in the book points out from the UK Equalities Review from 2007, which I know is a long time ago.
Is it? Our perception of time is really fucked these days, I think.
You think?
That's a separate conversation though.
Continue. Yeah, that's a separate conversation. More than 70% of recruitment agencies have been asked by clients to avoid hiring pregnant women or those of childbearing age. But, like, those of childbearing age, that's a...
First of all, that's a huge margin.
Yeah. Like, so essentially what that means, don't hire women. Don't hire women. And to become more like a man is to abandon...
If you hire women, literally, stop.
Yeah.
Get ducks.
Yeah, and if you're a woman who wants to be financially free, to make it under capitalism, you have to, quote unquote, become more like a man. And you have to kind of abandon these, even if you want to have kids one day, if you want to be a mother, you have to kind of abandon that in order to be taken seriously, because you just, my mind blanked.
Bruh.
Yeah, bruh.
Absolute bruh moment. But you've been so sorry. I'm listening to you. I'm taking you seriously. Just so you know, I am taking you seriously. But this is a heavy topic.
This is really broad. I think I should have narrowed it down to just one thing.
Okay. Well, one thing. I need that one thing. Don't hire women.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. Like, that's just a roundabout way of saying, like, just don't hire women. And
I'm JYP, and I approve of this message.
And I don't know, I think the way you experience the workplace as a woman definitely affirms that.
Okay, but what aspects of experiencing the workplace affirms that?
The way men treat women in the workforce.
Okay, yeah.
In the workplace.
Okay, yeah.
So
elaborate.
in the Everyday Sexism Project, Laura Bates has some examples.
You pulled your laptop onto your lap, so
Yeah, I did.
it's getting serious.
I did. There are some crazy...
Laptop! Because it's on top of your lap!
You did not make that realization just now. Be so for real.
That's so crazy! What the heck? See, I would know this if there was more women working in comp sci.
You're crazy.
In tech.
You're crazy.
Am I crazy or am I just a genius? Am I a visionary? You had no response to that. That made me really upset.
So obviously, all of these responses are taken from the forum that you can go online and look at. It's kind of like trigger warning because some of the stories are really just awful.
Yeah.
But anyways.
Link in description.
Shut up. A male colleague told me men should decide about abortion law and time limits because women are too emotional and have a personal bias, which is why we have 24 weeks. He says is really late and puts too much focus on what the woman wants.
Bruh.
Like, as opposed to what though?
Women should just stop wanting things. Like
women should stop wanting kids.
Yeah, women should.
And relationships with men.
Oh my god, women should.
Hot take.
Hot take, women should just stop.
I mean, yeah, no, because I feel like if women did just stop, the way I honestly believe that women can truly be free is if we start building community with one another, with other women.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, that's true.
We need to learn how to deprioritize our relationships and connections with men and focus on each other, because I think that's the only way we're ever going to see real progress and real change. Because where I have learned about redemptive love, and like Bell Hooks has written a lot about redemptive love, and it's with my friendships with other women.
Yeah, but I mean, friendships are really important. But I still think that I agree with you. Like I'm gonna put it out there that I do completely agree. I think that it is important for women to be friends with other women, to have really strong relationships with other women, and also for us to not rely so heavily on men in our lives to kind of determine who we are.
Yeah.
But on the other hand of it, I think it also doesn't really get to the problem at hand. Can men and women really have freedom in relationships? Can they be equal in relationships? Because I don't think, like, heterosexual romantic relationships aren't going anywhere. Nuclear families aren't going anywhere. But the problem is, I think that it's also, answering that question is really hard because I'm not sure. But I also think that, like, I feel like it's important for women to have other women in their lives, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be able to not have interactions with men in your lives, especially straight women. Like, I mean, there's no avoiding it, right? And I guess,
of course, there's no avoiding it, but like, you shouldn't strive for male validation to be your...
Oh my god, no, you shouldn't strive for male validation. No. But that's like, I mean, that's been conditioned to us again, but it goes back to our first point, is that, like, the only reason that we strive for male validation is because we're told that that's what we need to, like, live, right? Like, you know, things like beauty or our weight or what we eat or what our jobs are like or our personalities, all of those things, and like our interests, all of that is so that we're appealing to get into a relationship with a man so we can have this nuclear family, right? I don't know. I mean, is there a way that we can but we can comfortably have those relationships without, you know, losing our sense of selves?
I don't know, because I'm thinking now, and I'm like, because a woman may be very, very happy, right, in her relationship with a man, but how much of that happiness comes from deluding herself or ignoring the implications that heterosexual relationship has for herself?
Yeah, I mean, isn't being in a heterosexual relationship inherently oppressive? I think. Is it? I mean, like, let's say if you were two people who genuinely, like, they fall in love, you really like each other's personalities or whatever, and you minus all that stuff, is that really possible? Because it just seems so hypothetical when you talk about it. Like, even talking about it right now, I'm just like, you know, but that would never happen, you know what I mean?
No.
And it's like, is being in that relationship always going to be inherently bad?
Not for the man.
No, but I mean, it is kind of bad for men, because what's bad for women, I think a lot of men love to, you know, be upset about feminists existing, but what's bad for women is bad for men ultimately. And it's just like, there's no winning, right? There's no winning in this situation, but it's just like,
but like, relationships between men and women, ultimately they expect really traditional values from each other, I think, even if they both perceive themselves to be liberal people. At the end of the day, women are still doing most of the housework, even if they are both employed.
In an ideal world where all of these different stereotypes, these different expectations and roles weren't already kind of predetermined or in existence or something like that, maybe it could be that it's just how the family functions, It's just like some people just prefer to do housework. Some people prefer to be working or not working. And it's like you can't really generalize.
No.
And so it's really hard to even decide what's considered unequal or not. Because also it's like there's so many layers of this argument, if that makes sense. Because then it's like, well, housework is actually really hard. And like maintaining family structure is hard. And working a job is also really hard. And so the balance of those two things from each party can kind of it balances out, right? Like the weight and the pressure and that sort of stuff is equal. But does that mean that the actual relationship between the people is equal? Is that like when we view that in society and we think, well, housework or working a job isn't, you know what I mean? Like, what do we even consider equal at that point? Because I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. If men and women are going to be equal in a relationship, that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be that the roles are flipped or that.
No.
Yeah, like, well, I mean, what does it even mean to be equal in a relationship? Do we know? I don't think so.
Yeah, because can we ever truly have a free relationship with each other when a lot of our lives, we have more than one life?
I mean, well, let's not rule that one out.
Yeah?
Let's not rule out. Well, we don't know. None of us know what happens after we die. We could start a new life. We could go to the afterlife. We could be. I mean, there's like 100 billion possibilities, right?
But our lives are kind of dominated by money and the amount of money we make.
Mm-hmm.
And can we ever truly have a free relationship if we prioritize money?
No. I think if we live in a society where we have so much material value and like your own personal value or your value in any aspect of your life, relationship or not, is based around money, who has money, who controls money, no. But I think what's important too is that this is also important for women, but it's also, I think it's a PSA to everybody, is that we need to focus more on our personal betterment and our personal growth, on things that are external from the material values in the world. Money is not everything.
No.
And people are going to be mad about that. People can argue with me. It's just not everything. We took something, however long ago, it used to be shells, trade, whatever. Now it's paper. We take something, we say, this is going to equate to this much value of this thing. This is going to equate to this. It means nothing. You know what I mean? It's more important in our lives, the betterment of each other, the betterments of our relationships to ourselves, right, than it is money. We just live in a world that tells us that money is the most important thing in the world. It's not.
It's not, but the way our lives are positioned is that if we have no money, we have no means of living. And that's a scary thought. And that's why we do fetishize money, even though we may vocalize, oh, I don't care about money. Money is just this. And I know I say it, but I definitely have engaged in like behaviors that fetishize money, Like I'm not completely immune to, consumption and materialism.
One is immune no one is. No one, not in today's day and age. No, absolutely not.
No.
But it's just like, it's about what you value about people. I don't know. I mean, this is kind of straying now from the topic because now this is a lot more about our people's relationship to money than I think it is about men and women to each other. Because
I think the two are linked, because when a man and a woman decide to start a family, and one of them wants to become a stay-at-home parent, and I read this, I was reading Invisible Women, and most of the time, it makes more sense for the woman to stay home because she's making less anyways.
Yeah, but that's a factor of the fact that's the wage gap problem, right? And that's like a big issue out in within the corporations, within the system. That's way outside of the sort of bounds of the nuclear family, if that makes sense, right?
But like the relationship that women have with money ultimately involves men, especially because if the majority of women are heterosexual, the amount of like mothers who are in low-paying part-time jobs that they're overqualified for is because those are the jobs that give them the flexibility to handle all of their caregiving responsibilities, all of you know, all of their responsibilities that are unpaid. And the reason why they have to, you know, have that burden is because men, like married men with families, they do not see a decrease in their working hours. They don't see a decrease in their social life. That burden is always carried by women.
But I think it's also because it's like, again, it makes women, when we want to think about equality and freedom in relationships, women never have complete freedom to be everything at one time. You know, it's always that you have to be making this choice. So it's like, as a woman, if you want to start a family, you have to make that choice then between your career and your family. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're pitted against, those things are always pitted against each other. For men, it's not. Or it's expected of you to like carry all those things at once, whereas women is really, you know, that's where I think a lot of the freedom is lost and a lot of the equality is lost, is that giving of choice. And it's kind of weird too, because I think that most of the time when we think about choice as being something that we should have for anybody, you think of choice as what determines your freedom, you know, it's what determines your sort of rights and your ability to be a certain way. But I think a lot of the time for women, it's that the choice is actually not even a choice at all. It's you know, it's a fact disguised as a choice. Because if you choose your career over having a family, then you get demonized for it, you know what I mean? But then on the other hand, if you choose your family over your career, you probably will also get demonized for it, because then there's women who are like, oh, you're not a real feminist or whatever. It's like, girl. You know, I mean, there's big system issues, and then there's also sort of more micro, smaller issues, but they all tie into each other, right?
Obviously, there's this. Oh, you know, a woman can do both. She can have both the career and both the family. But even women with careers without a family, like workers nowadays, they work so hard to the point where we're kind of exploiting ourselves, which is what Byung-Chul Han writes about in The Burnout Society. And obviously, if we're all working so hard and we're all trying to work on ourselves as projects, we view ourselves, our beings, as projects, as things to work on. Like, like if you think about like the cesspit that is LinkedIn and how people make, you know, the work they do.
Drop your LinkedIn ad in the comments section.
Do not. And how we're all self-entrepreneurs now, and how this overwork is leading us to be burnt out and depressed. Then that is true, like tenfold for women, the modern woman who was expected to be in the workforce, but then she also has all of these traditional expectations placed upon her. Also, like, how can you be mentally well as a woman in this day and age? Like,
you can't be.
You can't be.
Shout out women who aren't mentally well.
That's all of us.
Shout out women. Like, stop.
I think, honestly, I should have just started this episode by saying, like, I think it's impossible for a woman to be fully mentally well.
This whole episode has just been, like, us, like, trying to figure out what we're even talking about. Like, we don't even know what the topic is.
No, because I think that I bit off more than I could chew.
I don't think you bit off more than you can chew. I think this is a really, really, really big topic.
It's hard to talk about.
It is, and I think there's so many ways that we could have looked at it. And what's difficult is that everything has so much nuance and layers of context.
Yeah.
That it's like, you take one example and then you gotta pick apart all the things that come with that. You know what I mean? That's what makes it so complicated. But at the end of the day, it's not that complicated. Just men and women should be equal and treated the exact same, because we're all the same. We're all just people. You know what I mean?
But we're not treated the same.
No, I know. That's what I mean. We should have the same rights. We should have the same expectations put on us, you know, and then from there, you as an individual can decide who you want to be and what is important to you, because then it isn't as linked to you should be this or you shouldn't be this. If everyone was equal, then it's just like, you are or you aren't, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Conclude.
This podcast episode is my Roman Empire.
This one was a bit of a mess.
This one was demure. No, I think when we recorded Celebrities and Authenticity, that was a mess.
Do you think so?
Oh my god, what the heck? That was crazy. Like, that was like, neither of us, we were so tired and we were just like, what are we even talking about? But I actually quite enjoyed this.
Yeah.
I think I enjoyed it, how chaotic it is, in the sense that I think the whole point of this podcast and the whole point of this recording is that it's been very difficult to even boil down what we're talking about, or boil down to like one specific faction of this conversation. Like, can men and women ever be truly free in a relationship?
With one another, yeah.
Yeah, like I just think that there's so many aspects and so many things that you know, it
Yeah.
shows how much big this,
Like,
how bigger.
It's like a really big like a topic, and it kind of bleeds into everything, because if women aren't taken seriously when we talk about, you know, our experiences of misogyny, right, and if their men think we're overreacting, then how can we ever have a truly equal partnership with a man if he can't see like a woman's struggle or
Yeah.
take it seriously? There are so many, like, how can a woman have a healthy relationship with a man where she has to shoulder so much more responsibility than he does? Like, I don't even want to get into how like mental illness has become so the way we view mental illness as like a kind of personal failing or as a biological thing, rather than something that has been caused by the fact that we're all overworked. Like, I think it all comes together. I just don't know how to vocalize it.
I think you're getting at it. I think that everything does come together.
Oh, trust me, when you read my essay, or if you want to, the essay that I wrote for uni.
Essay that Tina wrote for uni, link in description.
Link in description.
Go like and subscribe.
What if I did, though?
Honestly, that'd be so funny.
What
Actually,
if I
you could. If you, I mean, you could publish
I need to
it.
fix the one grammar mistake, but yeah.
Lamafau. What was the grammar mistake?
I forgot to write it or something. Okay, I think we should conclude today's episode.
Should we? I mean, I you know what? The thing about this episode is that I don't think either of us have come to a conclusion on our stance on this topic, and I think that's...
I mean, I have.
Oh, well.
I think it's no. I honestly, to my core, I don't believe that a man and a woman can truly ever have an egalitarian relationship. And I think part of that is, you know, what I've observed from some of the relationships in my family. Yeah, because I think, you know, during my studies, there was this kind of joke about me being a man hater and how I don't believe in marriage.
I don't believe in marriage.
I don't believe in marriage
yeah,
at all. And that's just because marriage, like, in my culture, it's a very sensationalized thing.
Yeah,
it's very
mine
much
too.
a social expectation.
Mine too. But yeah, I mean, it started as an economic thing. Like, it was really about, like, having economic gains, if, you know, for some people, like for someone or parties in the marriage. That's what it started as in my culture, but it's blown up into, you know, like being married now is an expectation. It
has never been
yours.
done out of love. And to believe that it's now done out of love today, I think is because I think to be a straight woman, you have to delude yourself a little bit. To be attracted, you have to delude yourself a little bit, because no matter the comfort that the relationship brings you, you will always kind of like suffer a little bit, I think. But not because of the man himself, maybe, but because of your positioning in the world as a straight woman, I guess.
You know what's so crazy though is that this conversation is kind of bordering on like the whole comphet conversation.
Yeah.
Like comphet is compulsory heterosexual, for anyone who doesn't know, who's listening. But basically, it's this idea that I think it's mostly derived for women who are sapphic or who are attracted to both men and women or questioning or something like that. But it's mostly that this idea is we aren't actually attracted to men inherently. It's just something that we've been conditioned to do so hard that it's like we must be, like we have to find things attractive about men because we've been told that that's what we're supposed to do when we're actually not. And I think that's so interesting is because I'm always on the fence about this topic, because it's like, on one hand, I don't think, like, I'm like, maybe I do have to delude myself into liking men. Like, maybe I don't actually like men. I've just deluded myself into liking them because I've been told to. But on the other hand, I'm also like, no, but these feelings are very real. They feel as real as any other feeling. So maybe that's just my way of trying to, like, make myself feel better about the inherent sort of inequality that exists.
When I talk about deluded, I'm not talking about, like, women deluding themselves into being attracted to men. I think what I'm referring to, because Mark Fisher says that because we live under capitalism, we kind of have to delude ourselves a little bit in order to not go absolutely crazy. Like, when we don't live in our reality, we kind of live in our heads a bit, you know, in our imagination, you know, which is filled with inconsistencies, because that's how we cope with how bleak, you know, our lives can be, because we live, breathe, eat and shit work. And I just can't help but draw a parallel to that and being a woman. Like, to be in a straight relationship, there's the potential for, you know, there's a potential for you to end up being abused by your partner. The expectation that you are going to bear his child one day. And no matter, like, despite all the negative consequences that it can have for you. There's just a lot of work that when it comes to being in a relationship with a man. because women are expected to shoulder all of the emotional labor. And if men are unwilling, like, I think men are very willfully ignorant. They haven't been conditioned to want to shoulder emotional labor, but sometimes it seems like they don't even want to try. It's like they don't want to do the difficult things that women have to do. And for a straight woman in a relationship with a man, you might love him, but if he's not willing to lessen your burden as a woman, what's the point? I don't know if I'm making complete sense.
No, I'm following.
Like, yeah, and I think it's because they delude themselves. Straight women delude themselves, and they stay in mediocre relationships because they delude themselves into thinking the comfort that he provides me, the love that he provides me, it makes me satisfied. But then you've seen these TikToks. Like, the woman had COVID, had to isolate, and the house was a tip.
Yes,
if you love your partner,
but that's like weaponizing competence, right?
Yeah. If you're a man and you love your partner, why don't you want to shoulder some of the domestic chores? If you're a man and you love your female partner, why would you want to impregnate her and put her through childbirth and pregnancy and all of the dangers and risks that it poses to her physical health and to her career? Why would you want to stifle her career prospects?
Well, that's the thing, is it's a very complicated argument, because I think it comes back again to the conditioning, right? Like, it's also, some men will argue, well, but she wants to have kids, or we want to do this together, and it's something we've talked about and something discussed, and she's okay with that. It's also that women, we're conditioned to live with the realities of what it means, because not every woman, sees it the same way. Some women really want to be mothers, some women really want to have kids, and it is unfortunately just an aspect of our biology. Like, I mean, and I'm not saying that makes it okay to just sort of, women should just get pregnant because that's what we're meant to do. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I'm saying is that it is an unfortunate aspect of our biological sense. What the problem is this conditioning that it's required of us, and then all of the other things that come with it, about pregnant women not being able to handle being in the workplace, or not getting hired, or not, what I mean? Like, those are all external factors that get on top of this. But I don't know, I think that you as a man have to shoulder the responsibility, not necessarily of any choice that you make for a woman or anything. Like, you shoulder the responsibility, I think, of being open to conversations and open to independence for both you and your partner, you know what I mean? Women and men both need to be independent of each other in order to actually function better together.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
You as a man need to be able to, like, take care of yourself, so that
they need to view each other as two individual people and not as, halves of one.
Exactly. You need to be able to take care of yourself, no matter if you're a man or a woman, or clean up your house, or cook for yourself, or regardless of your gender.
But the thing is, I don't think men view women as halves of one. I think they just view them as, like, an extension of themselves, because...
But isn't that still technically a half? That's still part of a whole.
No,
but it's
I don't think it's a part, but not enough to be half. I don't think men view us as enough to take up one half of them.
Even so, the analogy still works.
Yeah.
You're seeing
I'm just nitpicking now.
Yeah, now you're just seeing... What you're trying to say is that men are seeing women as a part or an extension of themselves, but what they should be doing is focusing more on themselves. Because the thing about men is that most of the time, the problem is that they don't know how to be a whole version of themselves. And so they reach that extension.
They just don't know how to take care of themselves.
They just don't. Like, this is getting into, like, other topics, but, like, the whole weaponizing confidence thing. It's not about you being, stupid and just refusing to do work. It's just most men, I feel like, just don't know what they're doing. And it's because no one teaches them how to do it, or it's just not valued in our society. And I just think that's ridiculous. Like, you know what I mean? You need to know how to cook for yourself, how to take care of your health, your emotional health, but we don't have the opportunities for that in society. I just remembered something that I read while I was reading Invisible Women. And these guys were, like, building a house, right? Oh my god, in Minecraft?
Fuck off.
No.
I think this happened in India. I don't know why that's relevant, but anyways. And these guys were building a house and they completely forgot to add a kitchen. But because they had grown up and they had never had to, deal with cooking or any of the chores like that. When they were building a house, they forgot to add a fucking kitchen.
Yeah,
bro.
it's not at the forefront of their minds.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but that's exactly what I mean. Like, it's not, you know...
You have... No, that... To me, you can't be that ignorant. To me, you... But obviously,
but
my bias...
clearly they can be, yeah.
But my bias as a woman is probably clouding that.
Yeah, it is.
Like, you're being quite generous, I think.
Because I know that we all have our own biases,
Yeah.
right? And I think that you're right, but you do have your own bias. I mean,
Yeah.
to me, that's unheard of. Like, I'm just like, oh, how could you not have a kitchen? But it really is because I was like, oh my god, so much of, like, what I do, so much of how I take care of myself and, like, things that I'm proud of myself for doing revolve around being in the kitchen. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's been expected of me on one hand, but it's also something that I genuinely enjoy doing because it makes me feel good about myself. You know what I mean? Like, for those men who probably built that house, if they'd never had to be in a kitchen, a significant chunk of their life, whether it's conditioned or not, isn't in the kitchen, of course they're going to forget it. You know what I mean? But that's the problem, is that if they had just been, you know, doing as much work in the kitchen as women had to, they would have.
Considered the needs... Because there's this whole thing, like, people don't consider the needs of women. They don't, like, a lot of, like, city planners and politicians, they are blinded by their bias and experience as a man.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why a lot of needs of women go overlooked. And I think the same thing can happen in partnerships with men and women.
Mm-hmm.
And when so much of your needs, emotionally, physically, whatever, get overlooked, you kind of have to delude yourself a little bit into just not going crazy.
But I think, yeah, and I think that's a lot of the time why women tend to... And again, this also sort of brings the weaponized incompetence back into it, is that women's needs go overlooked. And that comes out from things like weaponized incompetence, like their need to have as much downtime or just, like, not do work. And I think what happens is that women, instead of taking that and getting angry and, like, lashing out and being like, oh my god, like, because that's how a lot of men would react in that situation, like, they just get angry and lash out. For women, it's just like, they just
deal with it.
Yeah, well, they
delude themselves and they deal with it.
Well, not really. I don't think...
No, you don't think they delude themselves?
No, I think you're speaking for me. I think it's No, it's okay. I think it's... They don't delude themselves. I think it's just that they learn how to, like...
Deal with it.
No, not how to deal with it. Let me
I'm
trying to think of the word.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's like they learn how to meet their own needs. You know what I mean? Like, women are always learning how to meet their own needs.
They become self-sufficient.
Yeah, women are so much more self-sufficient. And it's just like, also, another thing is that when we think about, like, men who don't meet women's needs, it's because they use this argument where it's like, well, if women want to, like, you know, be equal or whatever, then they need to take care of them. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, because on the one hand, it's like, oh, meet the needs of women, and in the example with the house not having a kitchen in it, it's like, well, then why is the need of the woman to be in the kitchen? Like, you're a stupid man who didn't put a kitchen in your house. Like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? It's just like, I don't know how to explain it. Women tend to meet their own needs and just make up for what people lack. And I'm not saying that it's right that people lack that, and you should recognize where that is, but I think that it's not, you know, and that's what I think what's so dangerous about, like, things like weaponized incompetency is that it's just like, you don't synthesize information and learn from it. You just sort of, like, exist in your own vacuum of things and let other people pick up your slack. If you, I see this all the time with, like, my stepfather, and even with Aiden sometimes, but it's just like, you don't think that you do something right, or you prefer having someone else do it for you, and that's a nice thing. It's a nice thing when someone does something because they care about you, or whatever, but you not being able to synthesize how much of a toll that takes on somebody else, or synthesize that they're just doing things because of your lack of not doing them.
Yeah.
You know, the inability to learn from that and better yourself without someone directly saying to you, this is weaponizing confidence, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, women are so much better at synthesizing information like that. Like, women can look at a scenario and realize, oh, this is the thing that's kind of making it difficult, or this is where I can help, or this is where I can, like, do something, or learn how to do this, or figure out how to do this, so that it makes the situation run more smoothly. And you know, women are better at taking on those burdens too. And I'm not saying that they should do that, but it's like, women are much better at taking on the responsibility and the burden because we've had to. Yeah. And I think instead of saying that, oh, I mean, yes, we shouldn't have to do that, but I think what we need to do is just start expecting men to start taking on their own burdens too. Take on the burdens of other people, take on responsibility, because it's difficult and it's uncomfortable, but because women have to do it, men should have to do it too. Yeah. And that's how we can be equal.
Like, I think, obviously, before, it was the norm for women to go into the workforce. like, men's bodies are kind of seen as expendable. Like, they're the ones, you know, out working. They're always the ones on the front lines.
Mm-hmm.
Even though the majority of, like, privileged, like, men in Western countries, their bodies aren't on the line.
Yeah.
They still haven't shaken that mentality off. Like,
yeah, that at any moment, sort of, they couldn't...
Like the way men are still socialized is outdated. Women have always worked, whether it was unpaid. Like, there's no denying that. But when it was the norm for, you know, the nuclear unit, man go work, woman stay home.
Sorry, guys, Aiden just texted me. Wow. He's like, what are you doing?
What are you doing?
I'm talking about you and how annoying you are.
It's just that our socialization and our actual circumstances, they clash a lot.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think they clash a lot, but I think what happens a lot of the time is, it's also, I think what I pull apart from what you're saying is that men's socialization is really outdated.
Yeah.
And I think that's really true, and that women's socialization nowadays, especially in you know, the Western part of the world and first world countries, it tends to be very much that you are socialized to then have, you know, learn to accept things like feminism and accept things like patriarchy, and like learn how to like have conversations like we're having right now. You know what I mean? You learn to think about those things as well as, you know, being socialized in a traditional way, but you also learn how to resist them. But we just don't teach men how to do anything. You know what I mean? Like, I just find that so much of the impetus of taking action or like choosing a side or making these choices or making these conversations heard goes onto women. Like, it just always, even though we're talking about, you know, making equality happen, it's always disproportionately on women to do everything.
Because our roles that we didn't ask for are caregivers. Like, when governments, when they cut back, you know, services for care, it's because they assume that women in the private sphere will pick up the slack.
Yeah, but it's also like, we're even being told, like, caregiving also is about giving care to other people, like within the nuclear family, your kids and your husband or your parents or his parents or whatever. But now, especially with feminism, you're learning to give care to yourself. But it's like, it's kind of ridiculous to me that, like, even still in trying to instill this, like, you know, feminist, like, progressive, like, look on everything, the caregiving is still our job. Like, you can't just teach men how to be more caregiving to women who otherwise will do everything. Like, it's just, this is like going in circles of just, scratch that, bring it back.
Thanks.
Should we wrap up? We were supposed to wrap up a little while ago, but we didn't because, as you can tell, this is a hot and heavy topic.
Yeah, and it's really hard to have, like, a conversation about it. And I think at the start of the episode, I was like, but I really should have just been more laid back. And
I think we went into this episode thinking that we were going to conclude something, and I think our conclusion is that there's no way we can come to a full conclusion in under an hour. Like,
I think I wanted to just, like, pull up a lot of facts and stuff that I've read, and I was like, that's actually really difficult to do. Like,
yeah. Well, I mean,
like, speaking.
Yeah, it is for you, but you're not an English literature student at UOY, so you wouldn't know.
Shut up.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to talk about this. I think we gave it our best shot, but I know that there's enough people in the world talking about this and having these conversations and circulating this, and we're just contributing our bit.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. So if you have anything to contribute to this conversation, any thoughts about anything that we talked about here, please comment, please share this with your friends. Try to bring these conversations into your home, into your daily life, because it's important more than anything that these things start to circulate. And like, subscribe, hit the bell.
Don't forget to comment an emoji if you're a man of childbearing age.
Yeah, and you know, I hope you enjoyed listening to this, and if you didn't, I'm shocked that you're still here.
No, I'm so sorry this was a mess of an episode, actually.
That's okay. I think it was great. So thanks for listening. Bye.